we're all going to have difficult times. We're all going to have challenges. That's never going to change. You know, if I became a billionaire tomorrow, I would still have challenges, right? So some of the challenges would be different, but there would still be challenges. And, you know, for so many people, they're waiting for these things to line up in place for them to find happiness or for them to feel fulfillment within themselves. And I think it's so important for people to remember that we are perfect exactly as we are. And, you know, I know we were talking about this before, but I think my son is just such a beautiful representation of that because, you know, in society's eyes, he is completely broken. He's literally disabled in every single way. And people, you know, are both scared of him and pity him. And to me, he's perfection.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master San Qing, and what an incredible guest. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. I want to welcome to the podcast Dr. Chloe, a master of all things Chinese medicine and emphasis on herbology and just bringing her light and joy to the world. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and to chat with you.
Yeah. This is just a great space to be in, and the social sphere and interweb give us this ability to merge and share incredible insight and mastery into these things to give people a leg up to get a greater sense of their reality and what is the truth for them. And it may be this very conversation that leads them to that very path. So why don't we do this? Give people sort of an abbreviated version of your journey up until this point.
Oh, my journey up into this point. It's a long and winding one.
Well, just full disclosure to the audience, she's going to be back on this channel anytime. So we don't have to digest everything, but just give people a little taste.
Well, I always think it's funny because it's one of those things, there's that quote, you might not understand your life looking forward, but when you're looking backwards, it's easy to see how these things line up for you. When I was 15, I got a rare tropical disease called cutaneous leishmaniasis, which sent me on a journey towards exploring Taoism. And I really started integrating the wisdom of the Tao around that time. And then later in life, I was looking to get into public health and literally stumbled into a school of Chinese medicine and started looking at the Chinese herbs. I had done acupuncture before for allergies and for quitting smoking cigarettes when I was younger, but I really didn't understand the magic of the entire system of Chinese medicine and how it can and is integrated with the Tao in so many ways. But so I started looking at Chinese herbal medicine and I was like, this is customizable pharmaceuticals that are so incredibly safe and effective. And it's a way for us to actually build health instead of respond to disease. So I fell in love with Chinese herbs. My first business out of school was a sliding scale Chinese herb clinic, which was very challenging, but really beautiful and very fun in terms of getting to educate the community that we were in about Chinese medicine and how Chinese herbs work. And then shortly after that, my son Remy was born, and Remy has a rare genetic disorder called STXBP1, which causes a lot of challenges for him and also allows him to be such a beautifully expressed version of himself because he has zero of the societal weights on him. You know, like he has no concern about anybody judging him for hooting and hollering and partying and singing in the street and doing what he does. So he's just been my greatest teacher over this lifetime. And so when I had Remy, I started looking into helping control his seizures, which was what ultimately led to Radical Roots, which is my CBD and Chinese herb line. And ultimately, my main goal with Chinese herbs is helping empower people take control of their health and also using it for public health intervention so that people can find some space in their healing journey so that they can find wonderful teachers like you and start working on that internal alchemy as well, while having the support of the herbal medicine to bridge that gap.
Wow. Well, that was a very neat and clean little introduction. Wow. You had me at hello. I think, I think it's really beautiful how just the bountiful amount of energy that comes out of you, regardless of some of the things that potentially people would consider challenges. Being a single parent and having a beautiful son, and then helping him along his journey with what some may consider limitations, which I don't believe they are yet, within a societal sort of like lens. They're looking at these things going, okay, well, wow, that must be a lot. You know, if I had a penny for I'm in the supermarket, or we're walking down the street, we're here in Las Vegas, and you know, it's a horde, and people like you get these people walking down the street with their carts or whatever, and they look at me like, wow, that's a lot. I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's like a lot of what are they all your kids? No, I picked them up at the park, and they're just like, wow. I'm like, last time I checked, I wasn't really looking for your validation, which I think is so beautiful about your energy. Is there's no need for validation in your own path and who you really are. You keep remembering who you are, because this is a very deficiency that most people get into, is looking for this validation that it's okay. Well, it's more than okay. Honestly, I need people to understand we've just recently met, but like, you know, Chloe can't keep a smile off her face. You could rub it off with a marker and it'd still be there, because this is just the natural default and joy and place of where she really is on her own journey. And, you know, sometimes that might come through the lens of other variables of mental, emotional states, but it's always that default. I think it's so beautiful to see that, because that's what's necessary today, is to be able to heal. And the first point of healing is being accountable for the state that you're in. And when you can realize, oh my goodness, I have a choice. Is my glass half empty or full? Wow. There goes the victimhood. Bye-bye. Which seems to be this sort of like desensitized sort of state that society's in. I'd love you to speak on that, because you must come across it. This is the very problem with, and I say this with love, the whole healing space is a lot of people come in as a victim, and they want us to approve that they're okay to be healed.
Yeah, I think the victim mindset is a tremendous epidemic, if you will, in our society. I think it's so easy to look at your life and say, I wish I had something different, especially in today's day with social media everywhere, with everybody flaunting what they have, and with, you know, a lot of the challenges and difficulties that a lot of families are facing. And I think the more that we can remember that our lives are a reflection of how we perceive the world, how we look at the world, how we engage with the world, and how present we can be in the moment, then we're able to break free of that victimhood, because we're all going to have difficult times. We're all going to have challenges. That's never going to change. You know, if I became a billionaire tomorrow, I would still have challenges, right? So some of the challenges would be different, but there would still be challenges. And, you know, for so many people, they're waiting for these things to line up in place for them to find happiness, or for them to feel fulfillment within themselves. And I think it's so important for people to remember that we are perfect exactly as we are. And, you know, I know we were talking about this before, but I think my son is just such a beautiful representation of that, because, you know, in society's eyes, he is completely broken. He's literally disabled in every single way. And people, you know, are both scared of him and pity him. And to me, he's perfection, you know, and it wasn't, you know, I had to go through my process of, you know, learning that, of processing the challenges and the differences that our life has, then, he's a very different child than I was expecting when I got pregnant, but in that journey, I've learned so much, and I just see him as somebody who's able to really embody presence and really enjoy every moment as much as possible. And I think we could all learn a hell of a lot from kiddos like Remy. And I think kids in general do a really phenomenal job of that as well. But I think a lot of the noise in the wellness industry is just that. I think a lot of people are looking to get a lot of money by giving out, half-assed recommendations and supplements and trying to have people fill that void with something external as opposed to looking internally and realizing that we have all of the power to live the happy lives within ourselves if we're only willing to sit with that and to embrace it and to realize our own power.
Now, it's so refreshing to hear your wisdom teaching. And I find that what was the catalyst? What lured you in out of all the pillars of Chinese medicine? What excited you the most about the herbology pillar?
Well, for me, I'm obsessed with food. I really quite enjoy it. I grew up in New York City, so my dad would take me around to Chinatown, to Little India, and all the different places. So I was so blessed to be able to try food from so many different cultures and really have a deep appreciation for all foods and cultures when I was younger. And so once I started studying Chinese herbs, I started realizing, oh, these are largely foods. We've got fennel, we have cinnamon, many medicinal mushrooms. Many Chinese herbs are things that you will find in your spice cabinet, actually. So I started looking into that, and then I started realizing the depth of the wisdom of how we use Chinese herbs and Chinese medicine. So in Western medicine and in even Western herbology, we sort of look at it as a one-to-one correlation, right? So you have a headache, you take a pain pill, right? Does it actually do anything for the headache? No, it might sort of alleviate it for a little while, but you have no idea why you have that headache, and you're not addressing the underlying issues. But so in Chinese medicine, the brilliance of the medicine is that we're looking towards the underlying patterns of disharmony within your body. The body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. So we can look and understand what's going within by how that relates to the environment. So in Chinese medicine, we speak a lot about wind and dampness and cold. So say somebody has a headache, that could be from digestive disharmony. You might have too much phlegm in your body. You might not be processing your foods or your emotions as well as you should. That's correlated to the spleen in our system. You might also have too much stress and frustration. You might not be having enough downtime or even just water. That could be liver qi stagnation causing the headache. So that could be a different pattern that's going on. You could also just be totally run down and deficient. So these things all have Western correlation. So you could say maybe your, electrolytes are low. So that could be kidney deficiency in some ways. But basically you could be burning the candle from both ends, and that deficiency could be causing the headache. But without understanding where that headache's coming from, then putting a Band-Aid on it doesn't really help the situation in the long term. So with Chinese medicine and with Chinese herbology, we're able to figure out what's at the root cause of the symptoms. And then with our formulas, we create dynamic formulas with multiple herbs in them. So the herbs are not only whole plants, right? So we're getting the whole wisdom of these beautiful plants that were given to us to heal. But we use these herbs in conjunction to create really dynamic and safe formulas that address the underlying patterns of disharmony and deal with the presenting symptoms as well. So ultimately, you're building health over time while alleviating the symptoms that you're dealing with. So it's just a much more nuanced and beautiful system, and it just absolutely blows me away. I mean, I've been studying it for 15 years now, and I could study Chinese herbs all day long. It just is such an incredible system. And even in Western herbology, as I said, a lot of times it's still that one-to-one correlation. So still sort of a similar mindset to the Western medical system in some ways.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you go back in the test of time, there was a particular irritant within Chinese history. You call him Mao, and he attempted to sever all communication of this ancient wisdom that's been taught for thousands of years. And, let's just go with the Western model. And, and on top of that, I mean, I might be, pushing myself a little bit too much, but, people may look at human history as an example of absolute atrocious examples of pain and suffering in that timeline that has gone from everything to do with the Holocaust. But quite frankly, people don't understand that Mao murdered tens of millions of his citizens, 60 million actually. And people are like, what? When did we? How come I haven't got? Because people don't understand. This is so corrupt, some of this stuff. But the reason I'm saying this is because he wanted to dismiss the whole model of Chinese medicine and go back to let's integrate Western way of thinking because this old stuff is nonsense. Yet the most powerful thing to offer anybody when you understand the mastery like yourself, Chloe, when you can really create a synergy with the herbs and then helping someone's body remember that frequency. You feel that. I mean, right now we're feeling it. We're feeling it within our bodies. You can feel that connection, that unified state. And then it helps them remember who they are. And poof, they're no longer ill. It would be considered a miracle. Yes, absolutely. To remember who you are is an absolute freaking miracle. And just like being able to create life as you have the ability to do so, it is the most powerful thing to be able to create life. And your beautiful boy and my children, this is the part of the gift and the miracles that we see every day. And they're nothing short of that. And people have been so desensitized from that societal norm that the real goal for a Taoist is to help humanity remember and reconnect with empathy because it doesn't exist. It's like it's just a part from the mind, body, and spirit, separating all these things as if they are separate, and then furthermore diluting it down to a fact that you're really not of much value. And this comes with transhumanism and AI, which is truly trying to destroy the human being. And that we are creators. That is our default. That is our natural state. And to take from humanity the first things of creation, which is, being able to write, produce, form these incredible processes in the form of art, and dismissing that as nothing more than abstract doing is kind of a little diabolical, which furthermore goes, well, you're human, you don't need that. I mean, what do you offer now? Quite frankly, that was the most powerful part, which is your creativity. We took that off the first thing. So why don't you just put a chip in your brain and then we'll get right down with the get down. And, you need to be better than the AI now. You're not better than the AI. You're lesser. I think I went down a path here, but I figured you'd be able to embellish on that.
Well, you cut out a little bit there, but I think I got most of it. But one of the things, what I love that you just said is helping us remember who we are. And that's one of the things that I say about Chinese medicine all the time. Like people are like, well, what are the acupuncture needles doing? And I'm always like, and even with the herbs, it's like, it is a reminder to the body how it's supposed to feel, what's supposed to be happening here. It's just a reminder to your body to bring it back to self, to bring it back to homeostasis. We're not doing anything, it's like acupuncturists and herbalists, like we do a lot, but also really it's helping provide your body with that reminder in such a in a place of trust that our bodies have a knowingness that our heads do not a lot of the time. And I think, you know, again, the work that you're doing, it's so synergistic because it's you know, we as doctors can help your body remember that, start healing, start moving in that direction. But unless you're able to find a teacher who's able to help you really integrate that, like mind, body, and spirit, then that healing will also still continue to go off course. So you'll continue to need more acupuncture. You'll continue to need more herbs. You'll continue to go down this path of looking for something external to heal and remind your body of who you already are. But again, I think that these treatment methods are just so brilliant to be that bridge to help you find that space to which you can then start internalizing and remembering your power and your integration and your wholeness within yourself and within the entire system. So I love the remembrance in that. I think that's such an important point for everybody to internalize as much as possible, because it is the wisdom that we have within us. Our bodies are truly, truly so incredibly miraculous. And that's why that's why AI will never out create any of us. You know, we don't have to worry about that. AI doesn't have a soul, you know, like we have an innate wisdom that technology will never come close to. That's why pharmaceuticals will never come close to the wisdom of Mother Nature's brilliance and beauty when it comes to herbal medicine. It's not even close, you know? So I think that remembrance is the most essential part of Chinese medicine and Taoism, from my understanding.
And so, what do you think is the most common thing that you come across within your practices and helping people? Do you still see people one on one, or
Mm-hmm.
so when you're seeing this? What's the common theme? Is there discontent? What would it come in the form of? You know, a nutshell. Fast forward for anyone who's not familiar. You know, a Taoist understanding of the nature of reality. Everything is energy, and it's formed like that. So thought, feelings, and emotions transmute and then form within the physical body. There's a cycle of things. More commonly, it will sit in your yellow cord and then be distributed to the individual organs that will then transmute into a material state of physical illness that have accumulated over time. That's the general understanding of how the energetics work for Taoists. Now, what is the most common thing that you come across these days? Is there higher levels of depression, anxiety? I mean, they must be on the forefront of most of your patients, because it's like a dog in the bone. The environment is percolating this type of evidence all the time. And how is it for you?
Definitely anxiety, depression. I work with, since I'm sort of known for having a son with a complex neurological condition, I do work with a lot of people with complex neurological conditions, but also a lot of depression, anxiety, and then hormonal imbalances with women, because all of these things are incredibly prevalent in today's society. I do think that there is so much external noise coming at us, trying to keep us in that fear space, right? The election just passed, and both sides, right? Nonsense. I mean, like, one is saying the world's going to end if the other one wins. The other one's saying the world's going to end if the other one wins. And you're like, okay, for me, I'm like, I've got to stay centered in myself. It's going to be what it's going to be. I don't really have any power over this. What I have power over is myself, my heart, how I can help other people, how I can show up for my son and for the people that I love, and try and alchemize that as much as possible. I think so many people are letting so many external factors come into their psyche and pull their power away from them. And so they go into this cascade of fear. And I think the more that we can remind people, again, that the power is within the present moment and within themselves, then those fears sort of step away because we really don't know what tomorrow holds. And I think I've had to learn that very viscerally in my lessons through life. When I had the rare tropical disease when I was 15, the internet was a new thing back in the mid 90s. And so I looked up cutaneous leishmaniasis and I thought I was going to die. They put me on a chemotherapy medication. I was terrified. And I also found peace in knowing that I had had just the most miraculous experience in Costa Rica for a month doing a hiking trip. And if that was how I was going out, that I was grateful for that experience because it was so life altering for me. With my son Remy, I'm very much aware every day that every day with him is a gift and not one that is promised. And that is one of the hardest things, I think, for a human to have to live with. And on the flip side, that's a reality for all of us at all times, So really stepping out of this big picture of what might be, what might happen, all of these worries that are so abundant and so easily latch onto our psyche, and focusing on what is happening today? What am I doing right now? Like, how can I be more present in what this is? Even if it's something that like you're not super stoked about doing, it's like you can find the peace and the joy and the beauty in pretty much anything. So I think the more people can tap into that, the happier that they're going to be, and the more they're going to be able to let go of these fears that for many of these fears, they're not going to come true. A lot of these things that we worry about so much and catastrophize, they're not reality. And if you don't give them energy, then they're not going to take your energy. They're not going to take your fears. And again, you can bring it back to your own power and focus on the things that bring you joy and bring you light. And whether that's supporting yourself or supporting others in order to help reign in that light and feel like you have some control in the situation. I think those are some really powerful ways to do it.
Yeah. Amen to that. That's beautiful. It does. It really, when you look at how many people, I get dozens of students on my doorstep wanting more, and they have what they've considered a Kundalini experience. And so you activate this sort of energy potential, and you're just super sensitive to everything. Your sensory perception is raised, yet they haven't had their ascended point of awareness where they can know within themselves the truth, their truth, the true nature of reality through their absolute. Because the only way that happens is for you to experience it. It means nothing. It's like if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that feeling has to be embodied. And there's sort of like certain things that, you need to feel into your physical body to realize that this is, an anchor, an activation. You alchemize those lower energy centers through your ability to recognize the power that you have in this physical body. And then it sort of starts to ascend. But then people get caught in what someone would consider, we call it a dantian. Some might refer to it as a chakra. It's that fourth energy. Well, we call it the fifth one. That's another story, talking about transpersonal points, but we won't go there. But that heart and the inability to access your heart and really truly understand the power that you have as the unified state. It seems to be more and more evidence, as you referred to the internet many years ago that you looked up, and now people keep being desensitized to this power, this empathy that the human being has possession of, because they're being further and further distanced from that power with social media, with internet, with all the material that you can have access to these days. What do you normally? What's the remedy for someone that has such a deep disconnect with that, which would be a very clear evidence of depression? what would you use as a remedy for someone in that sort of state, creating alchemy for that type of stuff?
Well, I think you bring up some really interesting points. I think the internet, in my mind, is similar, and social media is similar to money, right? Like they're both tools and they can be used for good or they can be used for evil. And again, it's sort of what you see and what you engage in. So you can use social media like we're using it right now, like we're connecting. It's a beautiful conversation. I'm so excited to get to speak with you, and it's such an honor. And hopefully we can maybe help somebody on the internet feel more seen and heard and have some sort of resonance with this conversation, right? I think that's an incredible thing. And that's the same way with social media, like it's amazing for me to connect with other families of kids with special needs and learn from them and feel like I have a community there. So there are a lot of ways that these things can be used for positive things. And there's a lot of ways in which our entire society is set up to isolate us and make us feel like we're less than and that we don't have community in society anymore. So I do think, certainly there are plenty of herbal remedies. I know in Chinese medicine, a lot of that for us is like a Shen disturbance, right? So if you're feeling isolated and disconnected, that does have to do with the heart, as you were saying. That's the Shen, that's the spirit. And so I have formulas like my Rest and Relax, which is everybody's favorite formula. It's just the easiest go-to, but it's basically a big hug for your heart. People take it and they're like, well, is it for sleep? Is it for anxiety? I'm like, it is just to hug your heart, so you can use it to help you get a better night's sleep, but you can also use it just to calm your heart and help you feel the love that is the world. And that's what's important. And I think that also, with the herbs, it's also, what are you doing? How are you internalizing those herbs? How are you internalizing what's going on around you? How are you connecting to the people in your world? Can you see the toxicity that you're engaging in and actively disconnect from that bit by bit? And we're all humans. We're all going to get sucked into this human experience and these stories that are all around us. But how can we take more ownership of our day and our minds through actively, engaging in the things that bring us peace? And if that means disconnecting from your phone completely, then maybe that's what has to happen as well.
I would agree. Another thing that seems to be separating society is this complete destruction of any sort of nutritional value in the foods that are offered today. And specifically, the destroying and deconstruction of the mitochondria through, let's say, seed oil. What a great example. Would you suggest someone a protocol to cleanse or to purify from something as toxic as a lifetime of eating nothing but processed foods? And even today, just vegetables right now are on the chopping block, are being laced up. Even anything organic, there's quite clear evidence of programs to lace them with other toxic things for preservation purposes. We want your food to last longer. It's got to be out of control. What would be a good remedy for something like that?
It is absolutely out of control. And as somebody who advocates very hard for the health of our children moving forward, it is the most disturbing reality that our foods are completely laced with toxins, whether it's glyphosate or naphtha, which is one of the toxins that is put on the coatings of our fruits and vegetables in the stores, which is not only a carcinogen, but it's known to injure DNA and cause genetic mutations. So as a mom of a child with a rare genetic disorder, I think, the prevalence, we always talk about autism and how that's increased exponentially. I do think that these rare and profound genetic disorders are also increasing as a result of a lot of these toxins. I think first things first, people need to get clean water and clean air and eat whole foods. Ideally, you're getting that directly from the farmer. I drive my ass over to the farm and pick up my meat once a month. I'm at the farmer's market all the time. I have my CSA, and it's hard and it's more expensive. But if I can cook every meal that me and my son eat from scratch for the most part, then anybody can do it. It's not, cooking at home is easy to do. You just got to learn the basics, and it's a lot cheaper when you're cooking at home. And so getting that high quality food, getting enough water, getting sunlight, getting regular exercise to the point where you're sweating are all great starts. In terms of herbs, I mean, even just a basic milk thistle tincture is going to be really helpful. Something that's going to affect the liver in Chinese medicine is a formula like Xiao San, which is called Free and Easy Wanderer. There's also, I have a modification of that called Flow State on my website, but it really helps the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. So it's helping the body integrate these things and move the qi and blood throughout the body so that you're able to process, again, both those emotions and those toxins really through the liver so that you can live a more healthy, vibrant, embodied life. So that's a great formula for that. But really, it also, if you're not getting the basics right, by finding the clean food and the water, you're still swimming upstream. So that's first step. But then, yeah, doing something like that, even dry skin brushing is fantastic. There's so many simple ways that people can do at home for free just to start detoxing that. But I do think it's really essential, and I think it's incredibly essential, especially for children, especially for mothers. I mean, I've been doing a deep dive on the microplastic situation, and it not only crosses the placenta, but it's in our ovaries, and it's in, it goes across the blood-brain barrier. I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying. So I know a lot of people feel very overwhelmed by the onslaught of all of these toxins and sort of get paralyzed to the point where they're like, well, how can we avoid this? And to some degree, there's no way to avoid it completely, but there are ways to build your resilience and to reduce the impact that it's having on your body and the amount that you're actually ingesting. And that also has to do with the clothing that you're wearing and the products that you're putting on your skin, because that is all incredibly toxic, especially women out there. Our makeups, our products, our scents, those are all filled with so many toxins. It's really important to look at what you're putting on your body and make sure that it is safe and ideally non-toxic with natural products.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I mean, it's probably been 25 years since I put any scent on my body. I've literally got a cabinet full of this perfume called Creed. I don't know whether you've ever heard of it. It's a French perfume that was created for the royal family. Anyway, if you go and buy it, you literally need to take out a mortgage to purchase one of these bottles. And I've got like a cabinet full. It hasn't gone anywhere. I doubt that it changes form even in all these decades, but it's more my self-realization that there is no way I'm putting anything on my skin whatsoever. And you could smell the toxicity. Like I was just out somewhere yesterday, and like the people put on these body scents that make me want to throw up. Like it just absolutely. Can you not smell that? Oh, I smell damn good. I'm like, you literally are just breeding a toxic load that you're harboring deep within your tissue, and you continue to reinforce it and literally you're poisoning yourself. Yeah. And people don't seem to understand the microplastics they're another thing. Like absolutely, this is just another example. It's a can of soda like Pellegrino, and it was a desperation for me to drink this. But you cannot get even everything in glass. I mean, it's still questionable, and you're sort of like constantly navigating through this. I think that there'll be a change in the way we look at things, with potentially an RFK looking at this sort of stuff. I think it's exciting. I think there's opportunity for a real re-up and an examination of what this country has been doing, to turn around and see 75% of the population is overweight. We're not just overweight, we're obese. And
Yeah.
you look at this stuff and you go, how is that possible? You look at up until the 1980s, the first time they dropped a chicken nugget in Asia. Before that, from thousands of years, the Chinese culture, the Asian culture, have been eating rice with no evidence of, insulin resistance, furthermore, diabetes. And now it's just rampant. It's all over the globe with this toxic crap that just seems to be normal. And in a lot of cases, many parts of the world, a lot of this stuff is banned. And it's about time that we level up and we realize that, you can literally examine in about 3 seconds the well-being of someone. And it's like, oh, you're just fat shaming. No, you're fucking overweight and you're sick.
And probably malnourished also, while being overweight and sick.
And that's the other thing, the malnourishment part. It's like it would be a disservice for anyone. Oh yes, I'm a vegan. I want to help the sentient beings. I get it. I completely get it. But you will not survive as a vegan in today's society, in whatever food they're processing, they're pumping out. And if you are doing it out of a labor of love, then you're going to be sorely mistaken, because the plastic meats that they want you to eat and all the other crap, that it's even more toxic than going and just eating a frickin' burger at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the crap that they go, whoa, you're not eating anything that's of the animals, so this must be good. I would love for you to elaborate on that.
Well, you're touching on one of my favorite topics. So first and foremost, as a special needs mom, I have followed RFK's work for 10 years. I met him in Denver a couple of years ago when he was advocating for some vaccine regulations that they slipped under the radar during COVID. And I can say from my assessment of him that he is a very heart-centered, intelligent man who is really focused on cleaning the environment and helping us all build health. And he seems to have a deep understanding of these concepts and these issues that we're facing. So I am really hopeful that he might be able to make some positive change. Again, I think it does come back to our individual ability to take accountability for ourselves. So we're either feeding disease or we're building health. And that's all there is to it at the end of the day. If you are choosing to eat toxic foods, you are feeding disease. And I don't expect anybody to be perfect. I most certainly am not, but we move in the direction of health. We start making healthier choices. We buy organic grass-fed tallow lotions, and we do the things. You get your water bottle, and sometimes you drink from a plastic cup and sometimes you don't, But I think when we look at the health of our society, it is absolutely terrifying. Not only is 75% of our population overweight and obese and incredibly sick on multiple pharmaceuticals, but the health of our children has been absolutely decimated. So over 50% of our kids have a chronic health disorder. So these kids are starting off way behind the starting line. Right. And then most of them, unless their parents are changing that trajectory themselves, most of these kids are then on pharmaceuticals for the rest of their lives. And as a doctor, what I see is it's not just one farm. I'll have patients come in and they're depressed and have anxiety. And they're like, my doctor really wants me to go on an SSRI and that's what I want to do. I don't have the right legally to say you shouldn't do that. But generally, I find one SSRI, one medication for a short time, as I was saying before, as a bridge while you're working on other underlying things and building healthier habits. Okay, it's fine. But what I find is that you get on one pharmaceutical, and guess what? That pharmaceutical has side effects, whether it's depleting your mitochondrial function, giving you leaky gut, dysbiosis, brain fog, whatever it is. Then guess what? Here comes another pharmaceutical in order to manage that, or in order to help the first medication work better. And it's this absolute cascade of pharmaceuticals and just health issues that just continue to compound over time. So if these kids are being born and starting off life that sick, unless there is a significant intervention by ideally their parents, because really nobody else is going to do it, then these kids are going to continue to live a life of poor health, of poor cognitive function, realistically, because it's hard to focus when you're on many of these medications. Many of these medications impact how your brain develops overall. And, it just continues throughout the duration of their lifetime, robbing them of living the healthy, vital life that they can live. So I think that it's so important that we look at what we're eating. I think it's so important that we take accountability for our homes and start looking at the food where we're spending our money, whether we're buying foods that are regenerative and organic. And I obviously understand that there are financial implications to all of these things. There are also ways to make it more and more affordable. If I buy a chicken, I'm making bone broth from that chicken. I am doing, so you can find ways to budget while also showing the government, showing our families and our children what's really important in terms of our health and in terms of where we want to invest our time and our money. And I think there's nothing more important than how we feed ourselves, because that's what we're doing all day, every day. You can take my herbs and that's great. It's going to help. But if you're eating toxins all day, every day, and you're running around in chronic stress mode, and you're not taking time to breathe and to embrace the life that you have, to take a moment to be outside in nature, to put your feet on the grass, the herbs are only going to go so far, so it really is about the little steps that we can take in the direction of health and in the direction of taking accountability for our own health and the health of our families, in my perspective.
Yeah. That's brilliant. What are your thoughts on something like the simple, societally accepted caffeine cup of joe?
Well, as I mentioned, am from New York, so I will not be giving up my coffee anytime soon. But what I have become very psychotic about is absolutely never drinking coffee from one of those paper cups that you get when you go out, because those are lined with microplastics. And it's just really disturbing once you actually start looking at that research again. And coffee also often has a tremendous amount of toxins and mold in it. So coffee in Chinese medicine, we would argue that probably not the best thing. It's robbing some of our Jing. It's depleting our kidneys quite a bit. That being said, as I mentioned before, we like balance. So for me, I love my coffee, and I'm going to keep it. But for some people, it might be too much. So 1 cup of coffee, I don't think it's going to be a big problem. But are you having that cup of coffee with a lot of oat milk that's filled with seed oils? Are you having it with regular milk that's not organic, that's filled with pus from cows that are sick and have been on antibiotics their entire life? It's sort of, you have to look at what's going on and what works for you also. I think we also have to look at our lifestyles and what's important to us and what feels good. I think there's a lot of noise out there telling us to follow one prescriptive path. And I think really we all need to tap in with ourselves and see what feels good for me and what feels right for me and my experience. Sometimes I do things I know are not that healthy for me, but I also, maybe they bring me some joy in the moment that I feel like is helpful for whatever I'm doing. So I think, it's not about perfection, but it's about knowing what you and your soul and your body needs in a given moment. But yeah, definitely cut out those paper cups, because that's gross.
And so you mentioned Shen, and for the audience, that's just generally spirit. Where do you have a spiritual sort of like practice that you integrate with all these incredible wisdom teachings, or do you have anything that you sort of lean on for your own cultivational practices?
I meditate regularly, not as much as I'd like, and I do read the Tao every day.
Mm.
But more than that, I think my spiritual practice is really being with my son, because he really just brings me back to who I am and to the present moment whenever I'm with him. And, obviously I can get stressed or this happens and that happens. And, but, just really tapping in with him and being present with him is such a gift and such a spiritual practice for me that's primarily my spiritual practice right now. I would love to explore more of your teachings and learn more from you as we go forward, because this is
Yeah.
really just some incredible work that you're doing. And that's palpable even through a screen. So it's very exciting to me that you are getting out there more and helping so many people. But yeah, my spirituality really comes from being with my son, from being in nature. I mean, there's nothing that beats going on a hike here in Boulder, Colorado, and getting into the mountains and getting to sit and meditate on a rock at the top of the mountains and seeing an eagle fly. But, I'm very fortunate to live here and to work for myself, so I have the flexibility to do some of those things. But it is really profound to be able to be in nature as well. So those are the things that really feed me spiritually.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because you get certain practices and cultivational practices. But I remember the first time my first child was born, and he laid down between my wife and I was like, I'm never going to be able to practice or cultivate again. And I laid there and I was like, and Lutz like, this is your cultivation. I was like, oh, mind blowing. And I just laid there and I felt his emanated perfection just run through my whole physical by reminding me, Lutz is like, you're doing it right now. It's like you're experiencing perfection. It's happening right now. Your unconditional love for this beautiful boy is all that you need. I'm like, wow, holy moly. Now, if I could just bottle this and just give this to every student that walks through the door, that would be the answer. It's like, yes, I do understand there are some things that are created complex that have to be unraveled like an onion. Yet that is the power, that internal power of knowing and that unconditional love and acceptance that you know that you're there because you would do anything for this child. You would sacrifice your life for your child. You cannot understand that until you've embodied parenthood. That moment when you are unconditional and there's no thought process to it, and that's when you know you are resonating where you need to be. And when you answered that, I was just like, whoa, that's what I'm talking about, wisdom teaching right there, because there's nothing more powerful.
I really think being a parent is the greatest teacher. But I also think that there are so many beautiful cultivation techniques, right? And again, I love studying them. I look forward to continuing to study them. But I think we overcomplicate things so often by following a teacher or a path or a protocol, or here's my morning routine that I'm going to do every day. It's like if you can follow your heart in your day and be present in it, like that is the spiritual practice, like that's the foundation of it. If we can just listen to ourselves and engage in the world around us instead of being in our head and living in these stories, then that's the first and most important lesson that we can have. Because again, there are just so many different stories pulling at us at all times. And it's so easy to be pulled in those directions. And there's so much beauty and wisdom when you slow things down and remember where you are and who you are.
Absolutely. I mean, if anyone will ask me, it'll be like, well, Jiffer, this seems so slow. And I said, it's not slow enough. And they're like, wow, what are you talking about? If you believe in your finite mind that this is too slow, it ain't slow enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of accumulating and absorbing the riches, is to be the now moment. And the slower you go, the more you absorb, the more you realize and remember. And then that energy starts to really, that build that you and I are having right now, just oscillating in this conversation, is this very set evidence. And there's nothing more powerful than that. And, the cultivational practices, absolutely, and I'm a fanboy of Taoism, of course, but the alchemy helps the seeker become the knower. And, there's a reason why people fall into that path. But when you truly are Wu Ji embodied as Wu Wei, then we see some real crazy stuff. So, it's like, hang on a second, well, effortless action, effortless effort, that's a paradox. It's screwing my head, because effortless action is the breath. You obtain everything instantly with the breath, and you are activating and rippling that effect. You're integrating into that fabric, what we call the primordial mother, the fabric of perfection. And then you're able to embody it and remember who you are. And then now you're off to the races. Now, all of a sudden, anything is possible, as it should be, because that's the truth. You're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. Oh, yeah. Right now. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I want the audience to realize, because a few time constraints, and we had a great conversation beforehand, and I'm just very grateful that Chloe has spent so much time with me today. That this will be part one of probably 1,000, and be a very familiar face within this podcast. So I just want to, first and foremost, before we end this conversation, I want to ask you, what is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Oh, that's a good one. Huh. My definition of spiritual consciousness, I think that would be just sort of awakening to the magic that is around us and that is within us, and just sort of being aware that all is possible and all is beautiful. And even if it's difficult, it's there for us to learn, because there just really is so much beauty in this world, even though it may not seem that way if you look at the news.
Yeah, that's that is beautiful. I've done hundreds of these and never got the same answer, as I should not.
Yeah.
We're just all a facet of the diamond of perfection. So this has been absolutely fascinating, this conversation today, and I'm so grateful that you are a part of my life, that we have rekindled our bond and remembrance of who we are. And it's mind-blowing how that just happens. And every day is like the first time that I ever experienced anything. And that's that childlike state that we speak of, that your beautiful boy has this power, this ability to be childlike in nature and accept everything at face value, which is really part of a struggle. But no, our wisdom teachers, your child, my children, they teach us this stuff, and it's forever. So I want to thank you for your time you spent with us today. It's been amazing, and I look forward to part two.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been such an honor talking to you. I can't wait to have you on my podcast also. And I'm really, really grateful for this connection and really enjoy your wisdom. It's really incredible.
Wow. So I want to thank you, Chloe. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I'm your humble 7th Seafood Taoist Master Sanqing, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.